Before we go into the podcast, I want to just talk about a business that I've set up with my friend George. It is called the Podcast Introduction Group. So if you want to join and be able to be featured on 24 to 48 podcasts to be able to reach an amazing audience, this is the place you need to go to. Podcast, being a guest on podcasts, is automatically establishing you as an authority and is able to build your personal and professional brand. We handpick of a bank of podcasters that we have to be able to grow your business and brand. We do 100% of everything that needs to be done by my team. You do not need to lift a finger. You are able to expose yourself to new and relevant markets by going on other people's podcasts. You also are able to create brand loyalty. People will love listening to you and coming back to your products or services, and it's able to increase your revenue. So if you want to be able to get involved, you can sign up quickly, registered with an account manager. There's an onboarding call where we target the podcasts that you want to be on, the type that you want, whether it's entrepreneurship, business, health, fitness, whatever it is. We then match you to those podcasts and you can start your journey. We have regular catch-ups with our account managers, and Google ranks you when people search for you. So when people are searching for you, you're able to see your podcasts at the top of the list. So if you are interested in being a podcast guest on multiple podcasts, we are the place to go. If you go to podcastintroduction.com and go and register your details, we will have a quick call with you, match your podcast that you want to be on, and we can then start this process ASAP. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Back onto the podcast then. Just one last thing before we go into the podcast. I just wanted to talk to you about the fact that I have a YouTube channel that has been going for quite some time, and I am recording and releasing all of my interviews with some short videos as well on YouTube. So please do check it out. YouTube on Absolute Business Mindset. You'll see a bunch of interviews there, all the longer format interviews and some short videos as well. So please enjoy that. And here goes with the podcast interview. Today we have Ben Johnson, who is a technology entrepreneur, actually a serial entrepreneur is how I'd describe it. Hello, Ben. How are you today?
I'm great. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to talk a little bit about your career and your journey, as well as your current business, which is Particle 41. But as the podcast is called Absolute Business Mindset, I ask all of my guests, what does a business mindset mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a business mindset is having a mission, a set of values. So I'll kind of give maybe an MBA type answer and then expand on that. For me, it's having a set of goals, right? Okay. I like the OKR framework, objective, key, result, but it's having a set of 3 to 5 of those in your mind, what you want to accomplish, what you're trying to impact within your within a business, whether it be a small business or of any size, and that's what gets you out of bed each day, and that's what's moving you forward. And then, of course, you're balancing that with family responsibilities and other things that are equally important, but that you have that purpose, that business purpose in your mind.
You said at the start there that you have a mission. Do you mind sharing with me what your mission for your business is?
No, that's a great question. Our mission, really, I should probably explain a little more. We're an agile software consultancy with a passion for persistence, communication, and inspired product development. So our mission really is to deploy software development teams everywhere.
But everywhere, in all businesses, in all niches, in all areas and industries. And
yep. If there's software, data science, data engineering, or DevOps, we want to be there helping contribute and bringing our expertise and our vision across many clients, to benefit our customers.
And does that mean that you're building software for example, one of my businesses is real estate, and would you be, if you were in a, I don't know, like a company that was a development of properties or something like that, would you go in and sort of suggest that you could build a calculator tool or a way to analyze deals and things like that? You would sort of enter in and say, this is what I suggest.
Yes, when you've looked out at the market and you've said, hey, there's nothing that does this, or I need these two systems to talk in a way that they don't currently talk today, we would be able to engage with you and solve those problems. I'll give you an example just to help. Sure. We worked with a friend of ours that is really good at like Oracle ERP, large systems of corporate data. And the user of the ERP was a manufacturing company who had a specific problem to go test what the parts that they were producing, take readings from those parts that they were producing. And because they're having to put a coating around that part that could either be really thick, too thick, meaning they were wasting, or too thin, meaning it didn't have the desired result.
Right.
So we built a mobile app combined with a industry tool for measuring that particular thing. And, they could look at their different orders and different things that they wanted to, that were driving the different data that was driving their manufacturing process. Right. We're able to take those readings and then produce reports also available within that mobile environment on, how their manufacturing was going.
Interesting.
So we build apps for those kinds of situations, but we also help large companies, deliver their service to the world.
Amazing. So let's go back a little bit about when you became a coder. So graduating sort of freshly out, I assume you did it while in your teenage years as well. What attracted you to coding initially?
I was always very interested in computers. I think I somewhat fell into software development in college in the dot-com bubble. I worked with a consultancy that was building like a kids e-commerce, like a kids toys kind of a commerce thing, and just a myriad of different projects that were trying to incubate in this particular company. I don't think they made it out of the dot-com bubble, but after that, that was cool because there was just so many different things that people were trying. The very, very early days of the internet. We're talking about like 99 time frame. I did leverage my learning with that group of guys and started an online travel company. And the online travel company, right around 99, early 2000, was before Orbitz, before some of the US airlines started to sell fares online. Right. And it was really disrupting the traditional, call somebody and book your tickets and your hotel. And so we brought all of that online, and it was a ton of technology. We grew that to like 70 million in annual travel, which is pretty decent. Sold that business to another company with poor cash controls, and they managed to run it into the ground in 15 months.
That's the
worst.
It's
a very thin margin business, but the cool thing about that experience is about 7-8 years that I did travel. We had to rack and stack our own hardware. We had to write code you just don't need to write these days. Session handlers, interaction with mainframes. There's just a breadth of technology that we had to do back then. And now the barrier has reduced, right? You have cloud services and all these things to make development a lot easier. So it's certainly gotten more fun and easier to produce results over the many years.
So you have sold a couple of businesses. So maybe as travel business, or maybe we can jump forward to Legal Inc. What's been one of my favorite stories about when I talk to entrepreneurs that have sold businesses? There's usually a story, especially with the first one that they sold, that didn't quite go the way that negotiations could have been slightly better, or the exit could have been slightly better. Do you have any sort of thoughts on selling businesses?
After doing the kind of retail travel agency Prague, I joined up with a buddy and we did a company called Travel Ad Network. Travel Ad Network is a vertical ad network. You had a bunch of travel publishers, like people writing blogs about destination or destination guide, and you had advertisers, and they needed to get those ads. And so we built a company that's like an agency between the travel publishers and the travel advertisers.
Right.
And it was really cool opportunity to also early adopt some of the cloud tools like AWS, because we were collecting a ton of data about how people were interacting with travel content and then building tech around that. So that was cool. It was also kind of an errand in just seeing how the VC market works. While there, we raised 2 rounds, an A round and a B round. And just seeing how the dynamics of the board interaction mixing with, the kind of the founding team, where the board wanted to pivot that business into a large media company, while the core business was selling advertising. And so it was just a different mix to move to an owned and operated model where you owned a bunch of content or you were doing content production, from where we had kind of originated, which was, doing deals with everybody else's content and being an aggregator. So that kind of ran its course, I'm sure. And it just kind of ran its course, fizzled out, I would say. And then Investing Channel was a lifestyle business for its founders, but it was also a vertical media company in finance. So I got to kind of learn, bring some of my learnings from travel into the finance sector. The cool thing about finance is if somebody searches a stock ticker, you can know a lot about what kind of investor they are. And a lot of times you start out a business if you're coming in with some founders and you're a CTO or a innovator, you generally will take some kind of stock options or, something of this nature. But if the business founders are just kind of happy to be owners, then you'll never really reach an event. So I noticed this behavior in that business and just decided that it was time to kind of go on my own and do consulting. I know I've been talking a while, but I'm getting to a good part. As I was doing consulting, a buddy of mine bet me that my LLC was not in good standing with my state. So in each state in the US, you need to do these annual filings to keep your small business in compliance.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know anything about that part of being a small business owner, and he made a safe bet. And so I listened to him a little further on an idea he had to start Legal Inc., which was a U.S. registered agent, so we could take handle people's businesses in all 50 states. And we started to build some technology around this, noticing that there were really, really big companies that hadn't really innovated a ton. And then there were some really good commercial companies. So we created a B2B SaaS company around legal services. And in 3 years, we're able to sell it to LegalZoom, and then stayed on at LegalZoom as like an acqui-hire. LegalZoom's a big brand in the US. And it was a cool ride to go through the acqui-hire process.
Yeah.
But in April of last year, I went full-time, heads down on Particle 41, my consulting company. And it's actually was growing and progressing while I was doing Legal Inc. And so I've always kind of had a service mindset and a product mindset coexisting in my business mindset, if you will.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, I'm Alex, the host of X Health Show, Meet the Future of Healthcare. Think X-Men, that's X Health, actual superheroes behind programming living cells to cure cancer once and for all. Tech that detects preterm delivery in seconds, brain-computer interface, or apps that employ AI to match your disease with the best treatment. X Health Show brings to you visionaries who push the boundaries of healthcare from Switzerland, the heart of Europe, and the most innovative country in the world. Let me introduce you to their startups. Head to X Health Show, Meet the Future of Healthcare. Happy to greet you there.
So I want to ask you about VC, but I'll come to first of all, do you think you were always an entrepreneur? Because you've started a number of businesses now.
I had a paper route when I was a wee lad, in junior high. I had a paper route. So I had to go door to door and ask for my SaaS money, my subscription money,
Right.
each month, go collect $700 from about 150 people.
Mm.
And so at a fairly young age, I was providing a service and expecting a monthly payment from and they were right on my block. It was one of those, a lot of times paper route folks, they have to move a little and their route is somewhere away from where they live. I lived on my route. So it was a really cool experience.
So you think there's something innate in you that makes you an entrepreneur, or do you think
Absolutely.
it was? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Are your parents entrepreneurial?
I think they dabbled with some MLMs when I was growing up, multi-level
MLMs?
marketing companies.
Okay.
But no, not particularly. My dad was a Navy guy.
Okay. So let's go on to VC funding, venture capital. So what's your thoughts on it as an industry, and what has been your experiences raising money for companies?
So there's been a huge shift, right? I mean, you could literally, we've gone through, in the US, we've gone through interest rate increase.
Yep. Same
So
here.
money to borrow money is more expensive.
Yep.
Everybody knows this. And so the dynamics in VC pre that condition, when you're essentially, darn near 0% interest, and now you're much more north of that. I think the game has shifted. So in the pre-world, we used to say, just show adoption, show people using your product. You can even offer it for free. A freemium model was a fair way to attack the market. I think it has become increasingly difficult to convince investors that that's a good idea.
Because it takes more to take the money. You need to give them bigger. Is it bigger risks now? VC companies are taking.
No, it's being highly selective. So what they want to see is revenue traction over user traction.
Right.
So I used to be able to go and say, hey, I have 1,000 users. Okay, great. That's kind of that's perfect. We're kind of okay with a seed stage or Series A type of situation. You get to that million user mark, here's more money. They don't really, they used to not care about profitability. It was more about, hey, we can get this thing to profitability as long as you're continuing to grow and invest and get bigger. There was an intrinsic value. Now I think it's very much more about real value. Like, are people paying for your service? And are you showing a positive trend towards profit?
Because it reminds me of.
I don't want to say they're forcing you to make $1 off of every, or make money off of every transaction, but it's getting closer and closer to that.
Because it reminds me of the story of Facebook and the growth of Facebook, and the fact that for a long time it was nowhere near profitable. And then when they realized that they could collect data and produce advertising and various other business models from there, then it was able to make money. Are you telling me now, if Mark Zuckerberg was starting a new business now without the Facebook money, he would find it harder to get funding by not having revenue streams already in place? That's
right.
Right. Interesting. So that whole tech model, because we were at interest rates at 0.025 or whatever, people were more willing to say, okay, so you haven't got a business model yet, but we'll do investment rounds because you'll work it out later on. Now you have to demonstrate. It's a different world, I suppose.
It is. Yeah. If you were a SaaS company and you could have a strategy of saying, hey, I have a product that I eventually will ask people to pay a monthly fee for, but just to prove that it works in the market and raise funding, I'm going to offer it for free. And then it lowers your acquisition costs because you have no money to spend on acquisition. But they would invest in something like that. Now you have to show your ability to acquire the customer. But somewhat the problem is you don't have the money to spend to acquire the customer. So it is much more difficult. I would say, though, that because of that, if you were to say have 1 million in ARR, like subscriptions for, 80 grand a month in subscription revenue, you're going to get money like so easy. If you've shown that traction, even if you're a little thin on margin, there are people that when they see that you have 1 million paying customer or $1 million worth of paying customers a year,
then you can scale.
Then you're there, and you'll have a long list, a long pipeline of people wanting to work with you.
Okay, let's move on to Particle 41. So why don't you, first of all, you told me it's a consultancy company where you're working with industry veterans to help companies in software, DevOps, and data science. That's my summary that I read from your bio. But why don't you tell me a little bit more? So just to give a lot of, or some of my listeners are not necessarily the most tech savvy. They use technology, obviously, but not to your level of expertise. Can you sort of tell me what you do in a sort of layman's terms so everyone can understand what the business does?
Yeah, I mean, we want to provide experienced, talented teams that are overseen by experts. I have not just myself, but I have 3 other CTOs that help me run the business. In that tier in our top tier of expertise and guidance, we're talking each of us have about 20 years of experience. So 80 years of experience collectively. And we have immediately deployable and flexible terms of engagement. So what I mean by that is we have a methodology for working with you, getting your product requirements, understanding your goals, and then putting those into an action plan that's highly visible to you. So what we say is we love to crush mountains of work. So my software development teams love to have a flow of work or a work list and just start clipping it off one by one. Yep. And we help you build that list. Right. So our methodology is not rigid or hierarchical. You're hearing from every team member. They're dedicated to you. And we have super flexible terms of engagements, and we want to move towards that expected business outcome, whatever it is, getting your app into the App Store, helping you prove operational efficiency, helping you have actionable data insights that you can make decisions off quickly. And then, really the reason for Particle 41 is it's the element. Niobium is the 41st element in the periodic table, right? And niobium is usually mixed with steel to make it stronger. So in the making pipe or making steel products, there'll be a little niobium in the alloy to make it stronger. Okay. Nice. And then back in the 80s, people might remember this niobium jewelry, which was like a pop metal anodized jewelry. It gives that anodized sheen. So it makes, metal products stronger and look a little better. And so we want to help drive the success of the products by deploying these expert teams.
And do you specialize more in products or services?
So we are a service company, but we are seeing in our client mix that either the clients are trying to do a tech-enabled service. So they have something that they're doing with human capital and they want to make that more efficient. And you could call Uber or DoorDash essentially a tech-enabled service, right? The service is delivery or cab, but it's now tech-enabled. And so we have a lot of clients that are trying to tech-enable a service, or they're trying to create a product that people would pay a subscription for. Maybe it's a product to manage your business or a piece of software that changes your the way that you do things.
Great. We'll come back to that in a minute, but I want to go into your business partners. So you said you've got 4 of you in total.
Yep.
So how is that? Are they long-standing relationships? Were they people were introduced when you were thinking of starting this? I'm quite interested to know how that, because you've started various businesses, and what I saw was that you often do them with co-founders. You don't. Yes. So I just saw that when I was doing the research. I was thinking, so you've obviously, I felt that you were wanting to take people along the journey, but bring people along with you. So how did you find the business partners for Particle 41?
That's a great question. So as I've been progressing through my career, normally, or I like to use, or in my career, I've had the privilege of using folks offshore. And my counterpart in the offshore team was a gentleman named Sukhdev Gidwani. And he and I, back in the travel company we got paired up on a project, and I was the product owner and he was the tech lead. Yeah. And we built a really cool piece of automation for ticketing, creating airline tickets, working through the mainframe system, the green screen system, and automating that ticket provisioning process. As a really cool project, we got to know each other. And then as I left each company, I would call him, hey, let's put together a team and go help Travel Ad Network or go help Investing Channel. And so he and I have been kind of work brothers for 20 years here. And
he's overseas, is he?
He is. He's an Indian.
Okay, that's interesting, because my business partner, we run a podcast agency as well as my podcast, and my business partner is based in the US, and it's not been a barrier at all. No. And now with the advent of Zoom and various methods of being able to talk to people, you don't actually need to start a business with your mate down the road. It just means the globalization of the workforce, and you're obviously, it sounds like you've got outsourced some of your developers as well. How have you made those relationships work with your business partner and equally with other people that you outsource your work to?
I mean, first off, it's like, if you partner with people who do what they say they're going to do, like that's the number one criteria. So, as we built a history of that in the practical day to day, he and I, you do micro alignment. So,
what's micro alignment?
So micro alignment is if you have something to say, you just say it. You're having a short conversation each day to get aligned. Like, hey, what are you focused on, or what's your biggest, thing? And you're kind of keeping tabs on what each other are working on, and digital tools make that super easy regardless.
Yeah.
But then after you work together for so long, you kind of get what each other are owning. And so you don't need to micro align as often, because you just know that those things would be said if they needed to be said. And so, yeah, I know what he's focused on. He knows what I'm focused on. And then we just come together as regularly as we can to keep each other in the loop. But yeah, so he sees overseas operations. We also have people in Argentina and US, and, we've made an investment in project management and service managers, to also help our lives be easier in terms of just making sure that we're giving the best possible service.
So what's more important for a business partner, trust or credibility? Like credibility in their work?
I don't see how those seem mutually exclusive to me. I think, I don't think those are, I don't mean to pick on your question, but I don't think those are separatable. Certainly you need to have trust and credibility.
Fair enough. Do you see yourself now as a software developer or a leader of your company?
Very difficult to separate the two. I would say I'm probably 5 years away from having that feeling of remorse or like that I hadn't wrote any code that day, right? When I started my career, productivity and lines of code or completed code projects was kind of how hey, did I do good or have I produced? Yeah. I think now there's a lot of value in, taking some thought time and not feeling like I have to fill every minute with, this detail Zen gardening that is software development. I mean, really, software developers are managing the details of your business, but hopefully in a way that, creates efficiency. And so I think as you're a leader, you don't have as much time to have attention to those types of details. You have new details like brand messaging and what's my service offerings for next year? How am I going to expand my service offerings? Are there ways of selling my services that my clients need that I'm not doing today? you need to answer those questions, and it's just a different type of work.
Yeah, so it reminds me of The E-Myth. Have you read the book The E-Myth by Michael Gerber? You should really. All entrepreneurs should read it. So essentially, you have three levels. You have the practitioner. So the example I think they give is a bakery. So you start a business because you love to bake. So you're part of the business and you're running the business. But the more you develop and you grow as an entrepreneur, you move away from the practitioner role, and you probably take, because he says there's three levels. There's the practitioner, there's the manager or the operations person, and then you've got the entrepreneur at the top. And as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you should be moving away from the operational sides and the management side of it, and you should be looking at building the business, diversifying the business, scaling the business, build it, like with the baker having multiple stores, multiple shops. Does that ring true to where you're sort of moving towards, that you're more focused on the business side and how to grow the business rather than either managing or doing the coding?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's a really good book. You should 100% read that. So you've built businesses, you've grown businesses, you've scaled businesses. Talk me through that last stage of scaling a business. How do you successfully start a business, grow a business, and get it to that point where you can scale?
I mean, it's a great question. When I figure it out, I'll let you know. I think, as you scale, you add more people, you have different leadership challenges, and you diversify your team. We're 100 people, and so we're starting to talk about 100 people things. At 200 people, we'll be talking about probably a very different set of things. So we need to solve our 100 people problems.
Yeah.
And so that we can get to that next layer of growth. And so, I think it's always a challenge, and it's always different. Scaling a SaaS business or a product company has a different set of challenges at each tier. But in a product company, then you're talking about, okay, how much juice can I grow and still offer enough support? So you're doing things like trying to automate support or provide more content around your product. And so you end up doing a lot of content production in the hopes that will drive up adoption and down your support costs. And in the services business, you're trying to optimize your methodologies, your playbooks. You're trying to think of ways that you can standardize your client engagements to offer them structure and ease of use. But also so that you can be more efficient. You always have some form of folks coordinating engagements. Well, if they can coordinate 5 instead of 3, then you're doing better. And so SOPs and playbooks are really helpful to the services industry.
Yeah. So as a service-based industry, I think it's very like when you're building a product, you've got your avatar who you're building the product for, and you might diversify and try different products which are for slightly different people. From a service-based industry, you've got to be very much focused on your clients, your current clients, and who's in the pipeline that you want to grow the business towards. It's a different mentality, because you always have to. Jeff Bezos was someone who said you always have to loop back to what's the user experience for your customers,
right?
And I think that's I worked in corporate in a service-based industry, and now the podcast agency is a service-based industry as well. And you always have to loop around who are the people that you're currently working for or working with as clients, and equally who are those people that you were looking to build the business towards, and focusing. And you said things like efficiencies, building optimal support services to be able to make sure that they have 24/7 help whenever they need it. Do you think, as a service industry, what do you think the fundamentals are to be able to make, and you might agree with me, you might disagree with me, but what's the basis for you the fundamentals of the service-based industry, either for your business or for the clients that you work for?
I think fundamentally you want to have a pretty good idea of the service you want to offer and how you want to offer it. So I think the way you price your service and the service description and what you do and what you don't do is really important to define. Like, you need to nail that.
Yeah.
And then really lean into, are you are you rabbit or a hunter or whatever that kind of sales analogy is? Yeah. Are you going to do a lot of short jobs for a lot of people, or are you going to do, longer term jobs with less people? And really defining that and structuring that for yourself. There's still an ICP, that avatar in the product and in the service that you want to hit. It tends to be a little broader for the service-based company. But I think it's in services, it's really important not to let your customer dictate terms. Right. And
the key point you said is, which I worked in tech for a little bit when I was in corporate, and it was so important to scope out the project. So we were working with other corporates, and it's important what you do, but equally it's important what you don't do, what isn't part of the scope of what you do. Because what you get is you get scope creep from your client, and they suddenly go, oh, actually, you're delivering that. Can you do this as well for me? Can you do this as well for me? And you end up being pulled in multiple directions.
Sure. It's like the fundamental thing in a service company is are you a project-based or are you time and materials? Just look at those two decisions. To get good at both of those is like a unicorn, right? It's going to expend a lot of energy for you as an entrepreneur. But if you decide, are we time and materials? So we're trying to sell our efficiency, we use time well, we manage time well, you're having to reassure the customer of those points, but that the customer is getting a fairly predictable cost. Or you're trying to do a project cost, which means you have to have a lot of comfort over the outcome and the technique, the outcome and the service that the customer is wanting. And so we've chosen to be more time and materials focused, where you're paying for a dedicated person for the month that's working on nothing but you. It's kind of a fee for, think of it as like 160 hours worth of work, and maybe you need 400, but you're paying for that many people, right? But I find in software it's very difficult to be more of the fixed scope, fixed cost, project-based work, because people. It's not like civil construction, right? Where it's a house, there's a plan, you're choosing all the perfect finishings. It's very defined. Software is more like, hey, could you add a room? Or how about we change this? There's a lot more flexibility you want to offer to your customer, because you're also getting customer feedback. And people are interacting with the software. So just simply choosing those differences and then sticking to them is really important.
So what's the plan for the next 2 to 5 years for you, Bain, and your business?
So we, of course, want to grow. We want to deepen our expertise. We'll probably start specializing. The team's very interested in RPA, robotic process automation. So we're really focused on that service. I'm also thinking about helping more in the merger and acquisition step. So as the VC market has changed, the acquisition or merger and acquisition should increase, just with how that's my prediction anyway, is that you'll see more companies who are cash positive, able to buy companies that are more distressed. And this will just happen over the next, but I think in that handoff, in that transaction, is a really important value proposition for a software or service company to come in and help audit the asset, the company's technology itself, and then help that change hands. Also, if you're acquiring a company, you're giving those folks, their stock options, they're making some money. They may be wanting to go do something else. They may have worked really hard to get to that acquisition point. So having some extra services to cover up those risks is really important. So we'd love to get more involved in those transitions.
And you might have an answer, you might not have an answer to this. What's the exit? What's the planned exit for this business? Or is there not one at the moment yet?
I think we also see a lot of synergy with like other service companies or MSP, managed service providers, where enterprises kind of go to live. So could there be kind of a combining of forces down the road? Absolutely. But I think we still want to get really good at what we do. But I could see engaging with an MSP, a large cloud provider or something like that to offer our services as an adjacent offering.
Amazing. And it's really interesting. The whole aspect of buying businesses, as you say, is a lot more viable because depending on what industry you're in, you've got people who have been doing it for a long time and they want to cash in and get out. You've got people who are maybe a little bit older who want to be able to pass their clients on to someone. It's a really interesting space at the moment. I think in lots of different industries of that, buying businesses to sort of boost your own growth, and you're doing a good service because you're helping someone that wants to get out for whatever reason, age or tired, there's burnout, whatever. I think it's going to be in these next few years a really critical place to be able to boost your business by absorbing, acquiring, or buying.
Yeah, no, and I think there's also been a lot of fraud in that area where people say, hey, we have 1 million users, and you go look and it's not. And so I think there's some extra reassurance by people really looking under the hood.
Yeah.
But it's just a huge transition to go through a merger and acquisition and adopt those capabilities. And I think it's a great time to incorporate a tech partner to help you own the asset.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, we're coming to the end of the interview. I asked the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They're quickfire questions. They probably need a quickfire answer with the time we've got left. But they've been told to me to be a little bit thought-provoking, just a sort of insight. The first question I want to ask you is, what's the best decision that you've made in your career?
Best decision. That is a good one. I think it's just to stay somewhat focused. In careers, a lot of times you'll shift. I think even if I had stayed like very travel focused in my software development or software progression, that might have even increased my value beyond. I did some industry shifting, but I stayed very focused on the service I want to provide. And so I think, changing gears too much is detrimental to your career growth.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
I think it's like, focus on the daily habits, right? Goals, kind of the idea of doing, changing your trajectory kind of 1% at the time. And then I also think there's a meme or I don't know who this is a quote, but your weekends are for building the life you want, and your weekdays are for the life that you have, right? So I think, using your time to the maximum and using and I probably butchered that quote, but, using your weekends to improve yourself is a game changer, teaching yourself, educating yourself.
This isn't part of the questions, but what do you use your weekends for? What does Ben do at the weekend?
Well, as in software development is constantly changing. And so I usually take the weekends to hack a little bit. That's when I usually write code or I've just used the weekends to get involved in some tinkering. Not that I don't have a life. I also play a little bit of video games, Apex Legends or whatever on the weekends. Yeah. And then of course I have 4 kids. So There's all kinds of things there. But but I think, and I'm saying that maybe for a slightly younger member of your audience, just, to evaluate that. I think I would be in good company of folks that have mentioned that, managing that time, especially when you're young, to learn as much as you possibly can, as fast as you can, is essential.
Yeah, I'd agree. Who helped you most in your career?
Good question. So unfortunately, he's passed, but there's a gentleman named Henry Wang that I met at the travel company, and he was a MIT Harvard guy, and he just tore me apart and put me back together again. He was not necessarily nice about it, but he definitely inspired a certain amount of leadership and kind of noticing that I was trying to get everybody to help me do more work, as a coder, I had kind of an interdirectional approach. And so I was linchpinning, I was getting in everybody's way. And so he really motivated me to say, hey, how can I help everybody else be more successful and get more done, and make sure everybody's on the same page. And it was just a game changer in how much I was able to accomplish. So rather than writing, focus on writing perfect code, talking to the other guys about, hey, how are we going to write this code? What's the right way to keep it organized, and having an agreement across the team of how we were going to implement this stuff allowed us to really pick up the pace. And that was inspired by him.
Awesome. Tell me about a regret that you have.
I think I will always regret just how time slips by. It's not necessarily something you can do something about, but I think I'll always wish I'd spent more time with my kids, or you just can't get that stuff back. I mean, I think you'd still feel that way even if you did budget exorbitant amounts of time with them. You'd still want more. But yeah, I just think you can't get back your time with family, and so it's super important.
Yeah, 100% agree. What are you most proud of?
I think I'm just proud of being consistently there for the team, and consistently there for my clients or my engagements, just wanting to be the same person, each day, pretty level and dedicated. And I hope everybody that works with me kind of feels like I am one of the more dependable people in their Rolodex.
Cool. What does legacy mean to you?
So legacy means to me, I have a specific inheritance target. I would like to leave each of my 4 children, $1 million when I die. So it is kind of, I don't know, I could probably be criticized for how material that is, but that is what I want to accomplish. I want to leave each of them, $1 million trust, so that they can have plenty of opportunities for their children, and kind of keep the legacy going of at least the opportunity to be entrepreneurial, and own their own lives.
Amazing. And lastly, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
So you can reach out to me at ben@particle41.com. You can also tap our website or contact us through there. I'm also on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's super up to date, so I'd love to see people at Benjamin Johnson on LinkedIn. Cool. But I'd love to hear from you and be able to talk to you about your challenges in software and how we might be able to be the element of success.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Ben. It's been really fascinating talking to you. I've learned so much, and it's reinstated a lot of the things that I was doing a few years ago in tech and sort of seeing, and it's been really interesting hearing your journey about how you've got to this point. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Cheers.